Red Dot. We're back on again. It's week 2, Gold and Black Live. And after last week's football game, it seems like maybe it's week 7. No, we'll get to that, and I'll get to a quick opening comment, and then we'll get to our sponsors, et cetera. But Stacy, not only was it a warm day in Cincinnati, but it wasn't a very productive day for Purdue.
No, I was really surprised with the result, as I'm sure all of the team was and the coaching staff was as well. Most of us didn't pick Purdue to win, but we thought it would be close, certainly, and it wasn't. And I think that Daryl Hazel watched the film. He said there were encouraging things. There better be, because that can't be the Purdue team that's going to be out there this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suspected it to be close, and it wasn't. Purdue got beat, I think, on the line of scrimmage, both directions, and beat pretty soundly there, and that's where they expected to at least be able to play even, if not maybe have an edge on the offensive side. And when they didn't, things started to spiral pretty quickly out of control there at the start of the second half.
Yeah, I mean, you figure Purdue's in the football game, for at least it's tied at 26 minutes and change into the game, and it did go south in a hurry. I thought that obviously the last touchdown before the end of the first half was the proverbial harbinger of things to come for Purdue. Okay, how this show works, if you are new, and we hope that we have some new folks every week, we have sponsors, which you see behind us, Hilton Garden Inn, when tomorrow's a big day, State HGI tonight. Also, of course, Basham Reynolds, new this year. Purdue students, find your way home with Basham Reynolds, and XXX Family Restaurants on the hill and on the level. A Purdue tradition since 1929. We have John Langenkamp in here. He's the official social media director for XXX, but also the guy that's behind with WL5 helping us get this show on the air. And then, of course, State Farm agent Trent Johnson at trentismyagent.com. You can chat your questions to us. You can go in the bottom right-hand box and fill out a question to us as well. We'll do our best to answer it. Our guest today in segment 2, Billy Dicken, Purdue's 1997 All-Big Ten quarterback, and we're going to try not to draw too many parallels to 1997 and 2013, but I think Billy at least went through some of those experiences, and we'll see what he has to say about that. And of course, Brian Newbert will be joining us also for segments 2 and 3. But Stacy, you look at this game, and Daryl Hazel takes a very positive approach to it, though he did say, you basically to the media at some point this week, you guys can call me crazy, but this is what I saw. How did you view the way that Purdue's new football coach, has approached things from a positive, and very much, like Danny Hope, very much that way, but there are some differences as well.
Yeah, I think that Daryl Hazel is realistic. I think, and I wrote about this in my prediction too that we'll have up on the site later, but when you hear a coach say there are encouraging things and you see what we saw, you're like, really? Are you being, like, really? But then when you are a coach and really understand the game, you can look and tell just a guy steps the wrong way, a guy lines up the wrong way, and he had said there are about 20 plays where the defensive guys just weren't lined up correctly, and Landon Feichter said there were about 5 plays that totaled about 160 yards where they just made a mistake. And so they're encouraged because they know we can fix that. That was us. We messed that up. That wasn't, they were bigger, stronger, faster. We can't compete with that. They really thought that, okay, if we just play smarter, if we just, play harder maybe and faster and kind of all of those things, once they understand they can do all of that, then they really do think that they can play better. Now, again, we come back to, does playing better each week mean more wins by the time the end of the season is there? Probably not. But Daryl Hazel says, just don't tell me I'm crazy. Just let us get through this year, and then at the end of the year, you tell us, were we a better team? And so I think that's really where he's coming from. He's trying to look at this big picture while still, really focusing on each week, if that makes sense.
I expected Daryl Hazel to be consistent, and so far he's been consistent. I mean, I know a lot of people have, during the game calling for a new quarterback to play, since the game calling for a new offense for the quarterback to play in.
Right.
And none of those things are going to happen. He is, if anything, he's consistent. I mean, we just joked about it right before we came on. He wears the same thing every day out of practice and potentially to the games. And, he does the same things the same way, and he's going to coach that way. And I just don't see him pulling the fire alarm and running around and scrambling things up here just because they lost one game.
Should he?
No.
Yeah.
No. I maybe some other former coaches would do that kind of thing. I don't think this current coach is going to do that sort of thing. He's going to be consistent, and he should be.
Yeah. Stay the course. You'll
You
hear
also,
that a lot.
and I'm not being facetious, so it may come off that way, that the $2.3 million or whatever that contract is does give you some time to try to figure things out and to say, this is my plan and this is, and we are in week one, and I think that makes some sense. It will, however, in my view, be a constant discussion point, probably week in, week out, depending on how the team does and how the quarterback does. I mean, that isn't shocking. We've been used to that around here.
You mean talking about the quarterback
Yeah, talking
every
about the
week?
quarterback and how that plays out.
Yeah. I don't know what to say that we haven't really kind of said
Yeah.
a lot in terms of what John Shoup wants and what Rob Henry is. Rob Henry is what he is. They know what he is, and they want him to play within the system. Right? I mean,
Yeah.
they chose him knowing what he was.
Yeah.
And they chose him because he was the best fit, even though we keep hearing about you need to fit the offense to suit Rob Henry. That's not what this is about. I mean, Daryl did say that they will try to protect him better, which is kind of funny to me because he said the offensive line played well. But so maybe that's rolling out a little bit, and that could be because of this defense and what this defense is going to try to do. But maybe we see him run a little bit more. I just don't, like Kyle said, they're not going to just make wholesale changes because they lost one game. It's crazy.
I should point out, right, just so it doesn't sound like we're totally defending Rob Henry, he needs to play better. I mean,
Yes,
he did
right.
not play very well.
Right.
He was the first to admit that, which he did admit that, and then got criticized for saying he needed to play better, which I didn't quite understand that in the Twitterverse. But
Right.
yeah, he needs to play better. There's no doubt about it, and he can play better. He had 1,000 days off between starts, and made that start in a hostile environment. I was happy to see last night somebody called in to talk about the fact that Cincinnati was playing their music right up until
I know you mentioned
the
that
ball
during the
was
game.
snapped during the game, which I did not understand how they were allowed to do that, and even a couple seconds after the ball was snapped. Now, that's not the reason Purdue lost, certainly, but could have been the reason for some of the communication problems they're having. They're blaring that music right up until the snap of the ball, which you can't do. You're just not allowed to. But they were doing it, so I guess in that case they were. But the point being, Rob needs to play better, no matter what the circumstances are, and we'll see if he's able to do that coming out on Saturday.
Is he too hard? You've both interviewed him and been around him. Does he have a tendency to be a little bit too hard on himself? I mean, in terms of that, is that a personality issue with him that could present a little bit of a challenge?
Yes, he's very competitive. Now, he played poorly, so I mean, he kind of, to an extent, deserves is a hard word to use. But like Kyle said, I mean, he didn't play well, so yes, he's going to take some of that on himself because he sees what happened and he knows that's not who he can be. But oh yeah, he is one of the guys, one of the harshest critics, kind of taking that on himself, I think, of anybody on the team, and especially when he knows what he can be. And I think that part of him, even though he doesn't really like to admit it, wants to prove that he can be this quarterback.
Yeah.
He can be the guy who's in the pocket and making the throws and getting out of his hands quickly and letting the playmakers, if there really are some on this offense, which B.J. Knopf at least looks like one, to let those guys kind of make the plays. And I'm sure he was a little embarrassed.
Yeah.
When you come out that game, you finally get your chance again and you play like that? Like, really? So I'm sure that he's just, this week, has been really focused and is really ready to show what he can do.
Kyle, you look at practice this week and the 2 days that you guys were down on Tuesday and Wednesday, anything that you saw there that made you, from an attitude standpoint or work standpoint, and both of you were there, you can comment.
I thought they seemed a little quiet on Tuesday. I don't know if you agree or not, but maybe that there was a little bit of hangover from the weekend. I thought they got a little bit better on Wednesday, and Daryl Hazel indicated that Rob Henry had a good practice on Thursday, which I thought he had some room to improve and practice there the first couple of days, and if he looked better on Thursday, that would be a good thing. It's so hard to determine, how a team's practicing and how they're going to go into a game, I think. We've been at this watching during game weeks now for a couple of weeks, and it's just difficult. It's difficult to determine. They look a little bit, or I felt they were a little bit, quiet that first day, but maybe picked some things up on Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you determine that when we don't see them hitting. Because to me, that's where you get, we do see some guys who are chippy, which Daryl Hazel said he wants to see, and he mentioned specifically Sean Robinson has been that way this week. But you see guys hit somebody late. Does that mean they're ready?
Into it?
You know,
Yeah, I don't know.
So
That's what you want.
I think it's hard. I think there were a lot of guys talking, and I wrote about this one day after practice, really kind of encouraging each other, which was something that we, really heard a lot about after that game on the sidelines when maybe they weren't doing it
Yeah.
as much. I think that there was an emphasis, and at least I saw a couple specific instances of that on Tuesday and Wednesday where guys were really trying to kind of help each other, which is a big deal.
Okay, well, and we are seeing, I'm not seeing many questions yet, which surprises me, so we may be having a little bit of technical difficulties with our chat. But I'm going to ask the ones that I would just be shocked if they weren't out there already. But Delapo McCarthy, Brandon Cottom.
You should ask her. She's on the
Stacey.
Delapo train.
Well, well, it's just the again from the more than casual observer. Obviously, they were no shows in terms of not getting on the field in week 1.
Right.
You have something to say?
Well, we just finished our pregame radio show, and just because I wanted to say it, I was like, they need to play Delapo. It is quite possible that he is slow to learn this offense. I'm going to admit that. We don't know. We can't. That's hard to tell for us to watch and tell in practice whether they're running the route they're supposed to run or whether they're getting the calls and all of those kind of things. Although he doesn't get yelled at all that much, which to me usually we hear a lot of yelling, and I haven't heard him get called out very much. So that makes me seem to think that he knows what he's doing. He catches the ball so well, and he's a big target. I don't know why he didn't play. And when I ask the question, all you get is, well, we didn't get enough snaps. I'm like, to me, that doesn't answer the question, So if he doesn't play this week, maybe something else is going on. And we'll talk to Delapo himself and see what he has to say. But in terms of Cottom, same, I don't know with Cottom. I mean, I think they just like Dawkins better.
Yeah.
Though I'll admit, and again, because I did not attend all the practices, the ones I saw, and certainly the Jersey scrimmage, Brandon Cottom left you with an impression.
Yeah, I would say so.
Can he block? I mean, these are
Right,
hard
the
to
blocking.
get.
We did
Yeah.
hear from John Schupa after that Jersey scrimmage talk about how he liked Brandon Cottom, but he needed to be better without the ball. So maybe some of that blocking type stuff and doing some of those little things that you expect from a running back he has not quite grasped yet. So that's potentially the issue with him. With Delapo, I just don't know. Maybe we'll find out more after this weekend.
We've got a question from Billy Barul, actually just Billy. That's a Caddyshack reference. Sorry. He's still possible. Is Danny Anthrop still possible for the Big Ten season? Any guess?
Well, Daryl said they hope to have him for next week for Notre Dame, but Danny also didn't really do anything of value really this week in practice except run. Although he looks pretty good running. I mean, and he's not wearing a brace on his knee. It's just kind of taped. So I would certainly think it's possible for the Wisconsin game. I mean, if not next week against Notre Dame.
Ricardo Allen, what did you guys see this week in terms of where Ricardo is?
He seems like he's fine. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm pretty surprised. He was full go on Tuesday, although I think he set out a couple of reps on the team drills late. But he looked fine. And considering what we had heard on Saturday, there was a high ankle sprain, and considering his history of ankle issues, you thought, wow, this is going to be a month deal that he's going to be sitting out during his senior season when he had so much riding on the season and had, he had hoped so much and had put himself in pretty good shape. But, he looks like he's fine.
All right, Billy's on fire here. He's firing questions left, right, and left. He says, with all the gushing over Dawkins that we've been seeing, is Hunt in any danger of losing his spot, or will he stay number 1 all season? He did fumble. Yes, he did.
That's a good question. I mean, I think, to me, the same questions we had about Akeem Hunt going into the
Remain.
season are still there. Can he run between the tackles? And because Purdue's it depends on who you ask if their offensive line played well or not. But they didn't rush for very many yards, and Akeem Hunt certainly didn't leave you thinking like, oh yes, he's the answer. So, but also Dawkins. I mean, we're talking about leading rusher. He had like 26 yards. Like, back up. You know what I mean? Like, and one of those was a 17-yard carry, I think, at the end of the game when on the very last series. So let's kind of wait and see and let this play out. And again, like we've talked about with the running backs, there are a lot of other things you have to do, not just carry the ball.
It is interesting that during practice, and maybe it's just perception, that Dawkins seems to get more carries. You think that's accurate? Or
On Wednesday it was.
yeah, and I don't know if that's just trying to keep Akeem fresh, or he's a veteran. I don't know, but I think it's we'll see. He's pretty good.
Yeah, Dalen Dawkins leads Purdue in receiving and rushing, an all-time obscure stat because he's the first since Corey Rogers, I think we looked it up in 1991, but again, we have to almost apologize for that. He had 17 yards in a kind of late in the game and his 44 yards in receiving. Not to take anything away, he is impressive, and I think Daryl Hazel spends a fair amount of time talking about him and what he could bring to the fore, and I think that's what's going to be interesting to see. Anybody else that in terms of tomorrow, that it is a tough game with Indiana State being able to, we bring Brian and we'll talk a little bit more about the Sycamores, but tough game to really know at the end of tomorrow by 3:15, right, what are we really going to have? What are we really going to have?
Yeah, the thing that I want to see, and just because the offense is obviously what's talked about, and especially with the way Rob Henry is playing, are they better when we know that they're going to, if not scale back even farther on the playbook, at least run the same playbook, and run few plays? I'm curious how many actual plays they're going to run, and if they're better, because if they're not, then that's a big deal. Because it's already the playbook is scaled back considerably, which is a thing we've talked about, and how I was disappointed to not see the offense we thought we were going to see. But clearly they weren't ready for that offense if they weren't ready for this scaled down version of the offense too. So to me, the most important thing is does this offense run smoothly?
I want to see more out of the offensive line, and I know they're, got a pretty good advantage over the defensive line of Indiana State, but they need to play better.
Size-wise, they do, that's for sure.
Yeah, size-wise, certainly. They need to play better, more consistent. There were times that they held up in pass protection pretty well, times that they certainly did not. But you got to be better in this game because you're going to get tested pretty heavily against Notre Dame, I think, in a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm. And for more on the offensive line, defensive line matchup, you can listen to our radio show where I talk technical stuff that Kyle hates, but it's kind of fun.
No texting and chatting at the same time or driving, but I'm texting Billy Dickin to make sure he's set to go here on the next thing. So sorry about that. I was unavoidably detained. But anyway, we will take a break, and then we're going to bring Brian Newbern in, kick Stacy out for a segment, and hear what Billy Dickin has to say. And that will be interesting in its own right. So we'll look forward to staying tuned. We're always looking forward to you staying tuned, but please stay tuned for the next segment on Gold and Black Live.
Purdue students, find your home away from home with Basham Rentals. Trusted for 3 generations to provide quality student housing. We are now leasing for next year, so call us to learn about our apartments and townhomes, all located at the edge of campus. We're eager to share information on our many units, supported by 24-hour maintenance. Basham Rentals. Call us at 743-8367 or look for us online at mybashamrentals.com or boilerapartments.com. Going to the Purdue game? Stay at Hilton Garden Inn, West Lafayette at the Wabash Landing. Your family will love the well-appointed guest rooms, the pool, whirlpool, fitness center, the breakfast buffet, and the amazing Hilton Garden Inn staff. Located just 4 blocks from Purdue University, Hilton Garden Inn has long been the choice for Purdue fans. Call today for a reservation and make Hilton Garden Inn your #1 choice.
Good driver? We've got a discount for that and a lot more. See State Farm agent Trent Johnson to make sure you get all the discounts you deserve on your car insurance. Saving you money? It's just part of being there. Call or visit Trent today. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
More than the players on the field. More than coaches on the sidelines. More than the fans in the stands. More than just scores at the end of the night. It's the action, the stories, the heroes. It's the Friday Night Frenzy. It's the Friday Night Frenzy, and it's only on News 18. High school football from where you live.
Segment 2, Golden Black Live. Brian Newbert joins us, and along with Kyle Charters, we are going to try to give you another 20 minutes of wisdom, and then Stacy will come in segment 3 to mop up, because we really struggle when Stacy's not on the set, but we're here to try to figure it out. Billy Dicken on the line, also 1997 All Big Ten quarterback, offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach at Illinois Wesleyan. And I'm sure you didn't have a lot of time to break down film, Billy, of Purdue, Cincinnati, but you've been in some shoes somewhat similar after your game 1 in 1997. But welcome to the show, Bill.
Oh, thanks, no problem. Thanks for having me.
You know, when looking back at the opportunity that was presented you, and obviously coming in, there are some similar situations in terms of you weren't the starting quarterback coming out of spring. You win the job in the fall of '97. You have a tough loss in a loss at Toledo, and then everything changes the week later. Putting your coaching shoes on and player shoes, what can the Boilermakers be thinking after that first loss to Cincinnati? What might be running through those guys' heads?
Well, you know, I mean, obviously, anytime you take a loss like that, I think doubt creeps into your mind. But and that's the key to turn this thing around for the players is, you know, they have to continue to buy in with what Coach Hazel is trying to do, and you know, try to put the first week out of your mind and get ready for your next week. I mean, like I said, it can change quickly, and you know, success will definitely breed confidence and get the guys going. So I think the biggest thing for the Boilers right now is they need to kind of put that behind them and buy in to what their coaches are telling them in practice.
Hey, Billy, what was Joe Tiller like that week after the Toledo loss headed into the Notre Dame game?
Well, surprisingly, you know, Coach Tiller was pretty calm. I mean, I don't know behind the scenes and coaches' meetings or anything like that, but on the field it was kind of business as usual. I think really the only difference was my reps got cut in half. So, you know, Drew had a good spring. Obviously, was a great talent as a freshman, and I got about 50-50 reps with Drew going into the Notre Dame game. So I knew that I had to play well, or they were going to go in a different direction, because, you know, I think any senior class is a little weary of a new coach just because they might want to start playing new guys for the future. And Coach Tiller really didn't do that. He really relied on the seniors, and I think that we really bought into what he was trying to do. And you know, luckily, you know, we played well the next week in Notre Dame, and then I started taking all the reps again. So that was nice.
Billy, what was that swing like from week 1 to week 2? Obviously, after the Toledo game, perhaps, you know, some guys start to think, oh, you know, here we go again with some of the things that have plagued the program before, and then a week later you're on top of the world. Just what was that like from week 1 to week 2?
Well, yeah, it's definitely a roller coaster of emotions because I mean it was a pretty low point after that Toledo loss. I mean, people, myself and the senior class were really doubting a little bit on how the season was going to go. We had been through a 1-10 season when we were freshmen, and it seemed like we were trying to turn the program around and just couldn't get over the hump a little bit. We had a couple seasons like 4-5-2 and 4-6-1 and all this stuff where we had really close games with some tough opponents and just didn't get the corner turned. And then when Coach Tiller came in and we lose to Toledo, I think a lot of doubt started to creep in your mind. But you just got to put that aside and move forward. And then the next week, after the Notre Dame game, we're sitting sky high, and we're thinking sky's the limit. And luckily, we kind of rolled with it a little bit and kept the momentum going throughout the season.
In the Notre Dame game, and I can remember, obviously things went well early, but was there a moment, because you still have to take that field with a smidgen of doubt in your mind, even though it's a full house in Ross-Ade Stadium, but you're a 20-point underdog. I mean, nobody thought you could win. Was there one moment in that first half, or a play, or something that you did? I know you ran very well early in the game. You threw extremely well as well, but was there any seminal moment, so to speak, where you said, "My God, this is going to be special today"?
Well, I guess there was two times in the ball game that I can really remember that were kind of big moments for us. I don't know when it was in the game, but it was pretty early that we were down on our own 1 or 2 yard line, and we got a big third down conversion to keep the drive alive, and we ended up going on a 99-yard drive. I think 98 or 99-yard drive and scoring. And I think that really got the confidence up with the guys. I wasn't real concerned, nervous-wise, with Notre Dame. I had played against Notre Dame several times before. I had started 2 years before at Notre Dame. I'd had some playing time when I was a freshman. So Notre Dame wasn't, as a big a deal, I didn't think. But I think as a team, getting that long drive was a big key. And then also later in the game when Palace fumbles, and I think it was Beasley picked it up and ran it back for a touchdown. I think that's when the whole crowd really thought that we could pull it off.
Can you relate a little bit to what Rob Henry's going through, being the senior quarterback who's getting his last opportunity with a couple of young guys behind him, and maybe the pressure that he's putting on himself, knowing that this is his last chance?
Well, absolutely. I mean, being the quarterback, whether you're playing really good or not, wins and losses are the bottom line, and that really falls to the quarterback most of the time, whether it's deserved or not. So, I can relate with him. He's probably got his reps cut. I don't know. I really don't know. I didn't even see the game last week, unfortunately. I mean, we had our own deal going here at Wesleyan, but I did see the score, so I know it must not have went well. And, I feel for him. You want your senior quarterback to be the guy that leads the team.
Yeah.
And he's been around a lot. He's been around, through some wars, and I think he just got to keep buying into what they're trying to do, and hopefully it just clicks.
What about when you're the first starting quarterback for a new coaching staff? Is there any more to the position when you're in that sort of role that perhaps you're that guy that new coaching staff leans on? You're the guy who perhaps is a tone setter for the years to come.
Well, I don't know if it has to do with anything with a new coach. I think that's the role of the quarterback. I mean, that's the guy that everybody on the team is looking to lead. I mean, and I think that will go offensively and defensively. The defense is watching out there, and if the offense isn't moving the football, they're going to have some complaints, and it usually comes down to the quarterback. So whether it's a new coach or the coach has been there for 100 years, the quarterback is that leadership position that they need to perform well and lead the team and all that good stuff, or the team's going to turn on you and they're going to look for some backups, whether it's a young guy or not.
Looking back at, and you obviously the week after the Notre Dame game, and I know Purdue hasn't gotten that big win yet this year, but playing Ball State in the week, and just talking about what it takes to get up for that. I know Ball State was a Division I or FBS opponent back in 1997, as it is now, obviously. But still, having to get up for a team like Indiana State, and even though you've lost a game like Purdue, what do you have to do that? Is it just stating the obvious that the fact that this program got beat 42-7 in week 1, that should be emphasis enough and motivation enough?
Well, I think absolutely it should be. I mean, I think that all the guys are feeling a little bit embarrassed. You never want to lose anyway, but to lose by, 30 or 40 points, it hurts your pride as a ball player. So I think they'll all be ready to go. I don't care, if it's, Alabama or Indiana State. I think they'll be ready to go. And for the seniors, they have to be looking at themselves going, okay, how long is this coaching staff going to give us before they start to look to the future and play younger guys? So that motivation should be there. I hope it is. I don't get to watch as much Purdue football games as I'd like. Sometimes I get a night game, or a little bit in the early morning. But I still check the scores, and I'm looking for them to have a successful season. So I'm rooting for the seniors, and I'm hoping that they're got that motivation to lead this team, because with the new coaching staff, I don't know how long it's going to take before they start to develop their young talent.
Yeah, your Saturdays are usually pretty busy. How are you enjoying coaching?
Well, I really love coaching. I fell in love with it from the first year that I did it. Illinois Wesleyan's here, my hometown, and the head coach has been here for 27 years. So he knew me when I was young, when I was in high school, and he called me up when I was actually playing for the Chicago Rush in 2001 and asked me what I did in the fall when I came home, and I said nothing. It's been the money that I just made.
Yeah.
He asked me if I'd like to help him out, as a part-time guy, and I really fell in love with it. So I did that for a few years, and then I started getting more and more involved, and I went back and got my master's degree, and now I'm the offensive coordinator and all that good stuff. So I love it, especially football Saturdays. Today just finishing up kind of my call sheet for tomorrow, and you just feel the excitement when you go out to practice. Right now we're getting ready for our first game, so it just makes you, it keeps you young, I think.
We got some questions, obviously, from some of our viewers today. But who was your favorite Purdue teammate? Now it's hard to signal. There were some classics back in your day, but yourself included, I think. But in all seriousness, what were some of the guys, personalities that you fell in love with in your time at Purdue?
Well, I mean, my best buddy from back in the day was Greg Smith. He was my roommate for 3 years. He's a defensive lineman. And a funny story about him is he seemed like he never practiced. He was always talking about being hurt during the week. So he's always sitting on the sideline kind of he would crack jokes at everybody else, and then he'd play on Saturday. So he was a character. Obviously, Mike Allstott was a great teammate. He was a character. I see Mike every once in a while still, and we have a good time. And then some of the other guys, Adrian Beasley was a great teammate. Lee Brush, Chucky Nworki. I mean, some of these guys are great football players, went on in the NFL, all that good stuff. Obviously, a young Drew Brees was a lot different then than he is now, where he was kind of, wide-eyed when he first came in, and now he's the man, calm, cool, collected, going to be a Hall of Famer. So a wide variety of personalities, and it's just fun. I mean, that's part of the fun of playing ball is getting to get to know all these teammates and their different personalities. So it had a great time.
Billy, when Breeze was your backup, did you see this in him? I mean, back then when he was a freshman, he probably weighed about 160 pounds. Did you see this sort of potential in him when, he was carrying the clipboard behind you?
Well, I don't know if anybody could have predicted him be where he is now, but I did. You could tell right off the bat when he was a freshman that he had a lot of talent, and he was going to be a 3-year starter at Purdue. And, really he throws the ball the same way he did as a freshman, same mechanics. But like you said, he was a skinny kid, came in and, had to really learn the offense and defenses, and he really studied hard. And, he was a good sport too. I think all of us seniors shaved all the freshmen heads that year. I don't think that happened before. I don't know if they still do that, but you learn a lot about a guy really when you go in their room and you tell them you're going to shave their head. But, Drew was really cool about it. He just got up off his bed, walked in to the bathroom, and put his head over the toilet. Go ahead. The other guys were not so pleasant. We'd had to hold them down, and there was a little bit of maybe a couple tears, but it got done. But you learn about guys, and Drew was classy, and he always has been, and he's a great pro.
Billy, and we really appreciate you taking the time today, because we know this is a game week preparation. Who do you have tomorrow? And tell us just quickly about what kind of offense you like to run, and how are things going for Illinois Wesleyan to date this year?
Well, we have a team, Aurora University. It's a little suburb of Chicago, and they're a pretty solid club. They're in a different conference than us, so it's a non-conference game. We should go up there, and we play well. We really should win. We're in a tough conference, one of the toughest Division III conferences in the nation. So we got to come to play every week. But we run basically a pro-style offense. We use a fullback, we use a tight end, maybe double tight sometimes, but we will go. We'll spread it out a little bit. We do use some of the stuff that we did at Purdue. Well, actually, a lot of stuff that we did at Purdue. Just we do it in different ways. But the thing about Division III is you're not always going to get the talent that is designed to your offense. So you have to really adapt and change your offense from a year-to-year basis, which actually, expands your coaching ability a little bit. So that's the cool thing about Division III is, right now our quarterback is a drop-back passer. He's not going to run around. He's got his foot in the ground. He's going to throw the football. So we're going to hand the ball off to our running backs and play action and get them in the gun when we need to on third down. And then we also have a couple young guys that can run the football, so we can get them in the gun and run a couple different read stuff with them and do a little stuff like Oregon or Nebraska does. So our offense is very varied. It just depends on the talent that we have at the time, and that makes it a lot of fun.
All right, Billy. Well, again, thanks so much for your time. I enjoyed it. I think we ought to have you on again, because I think you've got more good stories in there. The toilet one was good, one of our all-time best. But hey, best of luck to you, and we'll look forward to seeing you in West Lafayette. Hopefully not for in the not too distant future. Billy Dickens, thanks again.
All right, thanks a lot, guys.
All right, guys, we're going to take a couple-minute break and bring Stacy back in, kick Kyle out. You are watching Golden Black Live. You know that because your computer is set to it. But we'll look forward to talking to you and taking more of your questions in the final segment of Golden Black Live.
Purdue students, find your home away from home with Basham Rentals. Trusted for 3 generations to provide quality student housing. We are now leasing for next year, so call us to learn about our apartments and townhomes, all located at the edge of campus. We're eager to share information on our many units, supported by 24-hour maintenance. Basham Rentals. Call us at 743-8367 or look for us online at mybashamrentals.com or boilerapartments.com. Going to the Purdue game? Stay at Hilton Garden Inn, West Lafayette at the Wabash Landing. Your family will love the well-appointed guest rooms, the pool, whirlpool, fitness center, the breakfast buffet, and the amazing Hilton Garden Inn staff. Located just 4 blocks from Purdue University, Hilton Garden Inn has long been the choice for Purdue fans. Call today for a reservation and make Hilton Garden Inn your #1 choice.
More than the players on the field. More than coaches on the sidelines. More than the fans in the stands. More than just scores at the end of the night. It's the action, the stories, the heroes. It's the Friday Night Frenzy. It's the Friday Night Frenzy, and it's only on News 18. High school football from where you live.
Segment 3, Gold and Black Live. Joined by Brian Newbert, Stacy Clarity, and an entertaining visit by Billy Dicken, at least over the phone, from Central Illinois, and maybe his toilet story definitely goes down and was one of my all-time favorites.
You should probably add to that. It was about shaving Drew Brees'
Yeah,
head. It
yeah.
wasn't anything.
But it was. But
Obscene.
I want to have people go back if they just watch this segment. Make sure they go back and watch the replay. So. I want to thank our sponsors, Hilton Garden Inn, Basham Reynolds, XXX Family Restaurant, State Farm agent Trent Johnson, all supportive of this show. And we are now in our 4th year, something like that. Kyle said something, but I lose track of time for whatever reason. Stacy, what did you think sitting over there in the quiet? You couldn't listen to anything going on, but you could hear us chatting. That was about it.
I have no idea what was said,
That might have been better off from that standpoint.
except from your end, but
Yeah.
that was about it. I just heard a bunch of laughing at the end.
Yeah.
Must be pretty good.
Yeah. Brian, obviously you were in the sweat box in the Nippert Stadium's press box last week. Not a good start for Purdue, but your thoughts leading into this week. Obviously, Indiana State, a team that you've studied, gets beat badly last week and really on paper shouldn't put up a big fight tomorrow, but then again, we don't know what really Purdue can do.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably one of those games where you look at it like, if Purdue plays well, it should be in pretty good shape. You'd like to think, Purdue in its first game under this staff with a lot of guys playing, for the first time, not really for the first time, but playing for the first time in a while in some cases, get some of the roughness around the edges out of the way right up front, and they can get better incrementally every week from here on out. Now, there's going to come a point in time in the season where Purdue can be a better football team from week to week, and it might not show up in wins and losses. This is a week where if it's better than last week, it should come out of it with a win. I think Indiana State isn't a pushover. I don't think we can laugh at FCS opponents the way we could maybe 5 years ago because the playing field's evening out a little bit. But I think if Indiana State doesn't have Shakir Bell, their running back who accounted for almost half their offense last year, I think they're going to have a really hard time competing, let alone winning.
But and as I heard you guys talking this morning on the radio show, there's still a chance he may play, or are they that bluffing from that standpoint?
Personally, I don't cover Indiana State, but personally I'd be very surprised because it seemed like a very serious injury when it happened. Through the course of the week, it's morphed into this game-time decision sort of deal. It went from he's out for a while to it's a game-time decision sort of deal. But you also have to look at it like, what does Indiana State have to gain by playing its franchise player in a game where he could worsen his injury? This isn't conference play for them.
They won 7 games
This
last year.
would be a landmark win for their program, obviously. They definitely want to win the game. But is it worth putting their franchise guy at risk here?
Yeah, that's a good question. And Stacy, you've been, I know you watched or went to Daryl Hazel's radio show yesterday. Some interesting developments in terms of, and we were talking before the show, Landon Feichter's injury with the injuries, I guess, with the hands and all of that. But we talked a little in the first segment. But what do you think the makeup is? Guys like that, guys that are known as fighters, like Feichter. Antoine Lewis, you did a feature for the Express this week, also another defensive back that may get a lot of playing time. Talk a little bit about that.
When you look at the makeup of the secondary right now, you have 2 guys. You just talked about Shakir Bell and how important he is. Why would you play him? You could say the same thing about Purdue with Feichter and Ricardo Allen this week. They have not as much depth at safety as they do at cornerback right now, but But Fighter and Ricardo both want to play, and they want to play badly. And I think some of that stems from just what happened last week, and obviously it was not a good showing, and they want to go back out there as quickly as they can. How much will they play, I think, is going to be pretty interesting. In theory, they shouldn't need them. So in theory, why don't you save them? Although Fighter's not going to get healthier. He has 2 broken hands. You know?
How much worse can that get?
Right. So how much worse can that really be? Ricardo, initially, Kyle had talked about how they thought it was a high ankle sprain. He told me this week he does not think it's an ankle. He thinks it's a bone bruise, which scared him because that's kind of what he had last year too, and then it kind of spiraled on him. So I wouldn't be surprised. Even though Ricardo says he wants to play, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't play that much.
We had some questions that we didn't get to last time in our interview with Billy Dickin, but questions about the field and the painting of it. And I saw a couple twit pics. I think that the Purdue staff or ground staff put out. They're sprucing up Ross 8 in terms of on the field stuff. But we talked a little bit about that. I think you'll see that tomorrow. The field does look good, though. It's been a pretty good growing year in West Lafayette, with the exception of maybe the last couple of weeks. We've had a lot of heat. That's your weather and agriculture report for today.
But that's good for Bermuda grass.
I know, it's really good for Bermuda
Yeah.
grass. See, there you go. So that's your horticulture report for the day. But Stacy, we've talked about uniforms. There's been some talk about chatter about next week. Maybe when is Purdue going to bring out? Will it wear black helmets, or will it wear the black helmets with the train track and all that?
Right.
You're trying to follow that as closely as you can, and yet, what do you think?
Nothing has been said officially. Purdue Pete came out last week with his hat, or whatever you call that. Is it a hard hat?
It's
What
a
does
hard
he wear?
hat.
It's a helmet.
He doesn't wear it.
Clearly a helmet. It's not a football helmet, but it's a helmet. In case you swing
like
your
a-
hammer and hit yourself in the head, you got to have some protection.
Okay, so it's kind of like a hard hat or
Yeah.
whatever. And his hat had the tracks going down the middle of it. And so Daryl was asked on Thursday, last night at the show, if that means anything. He said he didn't even know. So fans looking to find out if Purdue's going to A, wear black helmets, and B, if Purdue Pete's giving them like a sneak preview. Daryl didn't bite on that. So, but I, just based on my own whatever, I wouldn't be surprised if they did something different for the Notre Dame game. I'll say that.
Yeah, probably not for the Indiana State game for that.
Probably
It is
not.
going to be a different environment though into tomorrow. I mean, obviously you've got the 2:11 session, which starts 2 hours and 11 minutes before kickoff. You got the Pacers coming in for the pregame. Part of that, all of that's going on 2.5 hours before the game, and yet you also have. I'm going to have rock and roll music supposedly play, or some kind of, not rock and roll.
They're having a DJ.
DJ during the course of the game. It's going to be interesting to see what we see from that standpoint. I hope it all works.
I think they're obviously trying to enhance the game day environment. I mean, I think that's really important. But the best way to enhance your game day environment is to get fans there. Obviously, they're working on that.
Yeah.
But there's maybe a little bit of a chicken and the egg thing here, where maybe you kind of do some bells and whistles stuff to draw people in. You know, how that stuff goes oftentimes depends almost exclusively on how into it the fans who are there are. If the fans there buy into this stuff and they enjoy it, and they go into it with a positive attitude, it might work. And then word of mouth might spread about how much fun Purdue football game days are, and that might help get those fans there, and then it snowballs from there. But you also got to win football games. That's the best way to do it.
That always helps.
I will be at the 2:11 session tomorrow, so we'll get something up on the site. So if you're not able to make it, and then you see it and you're like, oh wow, that's really cool, then at least you'll know what it's going to be about.
I mean, the team is going to roll into that and be there for about 5 minutes, but you're going to have the band and Purdue Pete. It's going to be kind of Slater Center-esque in terms of that's no longer going on, as I understand. All kind of moved to Mackey Arena. I do like what Daryl Hazel's trying to do, and that is to try to manufacture an environment. It is you have to combine that with compelling football on the field, and I think that's what's going to be interesting to see whether that comes to pass sooner than later. There's no doubt that next week, with Notre Dame coming to town, by definition, it's a nationally televised game, 8 o'clock start. It'll be a wild environment. Whether it's a competitive football game remains to be seen. But I do think that those things are going to be interesting. And Daryl Hazel, without question, trying to at least put his stamp on things early on to get it going. The things like the bridge walk they've been doing, and they're going to continue that again tonight as well. And I think that's part of it, all part of the show. You talked about tickets, Brian. 47,000 they said for tomorrow, about 15,000 short of capacity. what was interesting in the graphic we put in Gold and Black Express this week is, excuse me, where they sit on with respect to Notre Dame. Only 54,000 sold. Ohio State at 46,000. A lot of tickets still left to be sold.
I think if you had maybe a little bit of a better performance last week, I think people would have, been more inclined to show up Monday morning and go buy tickets. That's not necessarily the way ideally it would be for Purdue. You would like, that unconditional support, that organic enthusiasm about let's go see this new product out there, and that it wouldn't depend so much on that first outing. But obviously Purdue has to show it's going to put a compelling product on the field, because it's historically, all due respect to everyone out there, it's not one of those places where the support is unconditional. You have to put a product on the field people want to see, and Purdue knows that as well as anybody. Daryl Hazel knows that as well as anybody.
And in fairness, season ticket sales are up for the first time since 2007. They're over 30,000 in season ticket sales, and that is a step in the right direction. But what do you take from those ticket numbers?
I just kind of echo everything that Brian said. I think it's interesting that if Daryl Hazel didn't understand the culture, not just the culture within his team, but just in the community, he's finding out. Because at every step now, since you lose that game, now it's like you have to prove yourself again. I mean, all of this work he did the last 8 months, he felt really good about it, and now is it wasted? I mean, just like that, because you lose. The turnout at his radio show was not nearly the same as it was the first week. So something just small like that, and he made sure to say it's important for you to still support us. We need you now more this week than we did last week. So it's just kind of interesting that he's kind of seeing these things now and seeing what this is really going to be like here.
One of the things that's interesting is the season ticket numbers for students, only 6,600 this year. And you go back, and we did a graphic in the magazine about the fact that back in the high point under Tiller, one of the high points, 2004, 2005, they were at 13 or 14,000 in season ticket sales for students. That is a big issue because they put a lot of emphasis into that. Daryl Hazel is a very student-friendly coach, but it still is something that's got to change. I think if Purdue's going to start to fill a Ross-Ade Stadium. Something too with sales is that if you go back to the years you just mentioned, back when Joe Tiller was here, Purdue also had marquee stars. They had guys, people you could credibly put on the billboard, and people would, I want to go see that player. Purdue hasn't had that guy. They've had good players. They've had, NFL players, but they haven't had that one, great skill position player, especially a skill position player. The last couple of years, Purdue's best players have been defensive tackles and kickers. And it's like, it's great that you have that caliber of player, but you don't have the marquee guy. I think Purdue at some point in time needs to find that quarterback, or they need to find that running back or that wide receiver who people want to go see play. And that's just sort of the way it's worked out, from a recruiting standpoint, from a player development standpoint, that they haven't had that one guy. I think Ralph Bolden could have been that guy had he not got hurt. I think Robert Marv could have been that guy had he not got hurt, but they both got hurt, and Purdue did not end up with that marquee player. I think it's really important in the next couple of years to find a guy like that to really, stoke enthusiasm. Does Daryl Hazel, Stacey, we talked about that whole message that he's given from his first press conference back on December the 5th, and whenever that was, is, we're all in this together, Purdue family, so to speak. He doesn't seem to be a guy that's going to be deterred or be defeated by 1 week by any stretch of the imagination, but I thought it was an interesting comment that she made, that he's got to learn the culture is different to some extent here, as it is definitely a show me type. It has been of late, certainly in terms of a fan base.
I think he really values loyalty. I think that's really important to him. So that's why I think it's going to be interesting. He expects the fans to come, just because if you're a Purdue fan, you should be there. And as we've talked about, and as everyone knows, that's not necessarily the case. So I don't think he'll change how he's going to stay the course. He's going to be who he is, regardless of whether fans show up or not. But I think there's no question it'll bother him if they have the year that a lot of people expect them to have, in terms of wins and losses at least. And by the end of the year, when you're playing those other Big Ten teams that aren't so great at home, and you get 30,000. I don't know.
Well, they're
The
at
end of
37
last year.
They're at 37 for both Illinois and Iowa.
Well, tickets sold. I'm talking about people who actually show up. I know the last couple of years, the seniors on Senior Day have been really disappointed when you go out and you do those, festivities before the game, and you look up and there's nobody there, And I think that's something that is going to bother Daryl Hazel, but he also is smart enough to know you got to win to get them.
Yeah, and we are getting some questions that I'm not choosing to ignore, but have ignored. Brian, a quiet day for recruiting tomorrow. Just maybe the nature of the opponent, and obviously a big weekend next weekend. But talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, in recruiting, you obviously emphasize game day experience. You want recruits there for the best environment possible, so that those players get the best impression possible of what your university or athletic department and the whole environment's about. So when you have Indiana State coming one weekend, when you're probably going to play in front of 40,000 people at noon, 40,000 at what best?
Well, if they said 47,000, you got band day,
Okay,
you got
I'm
all
sorry.
that stuff going on tomorrow.
Oh,
Okay,
Band
well,
Day. People come for
Yeah,
that.
so, okay, you're looking at the difference between bringing recruits in for, Indiana State in front of 47,000 people or Notre Dame in front of 60 at night. You're obviously going to be prone to bring those guys in for Notre Dame. So really, you're just looking tomorrow for football from a couple unofficials. Kirk Barron, who's already committed and will probably be at every single game. He'll be a fixture on the sideline. There's a group coming up from Ohio with a couple kids with Big Ten offers. But then you look at next weekend, Purdue will really try to bring in a lot of their top guys. I know Denzel Ward and Drew Tranquil, the two commitments who Purdue's going to have to fight like heck to hold on to, are both going to be there. So that's important. And then basketball is having a gigantic recruiting weekend next weekend with 3 official visits and a couple really important unofficials too.
All right, we're going to start to sprinkle in some basketball here with Brian and with Stacy as well. But Brian obviously spends a lot of time covering that, and there's a lot of news on that front as well. All right, we have made it through our second show. We thank you very much for joining us, and we thank Billy Dickin, Kyle Charters also that was in with us for segments 1 and 2. I'm also, because I didn't do it last week and it was shame on me, Kim, Gordon, and the whole group. Rachel, thank you so much from the folks at WLFI. We will look forward to joining you. It should be a big week next week on the show. Any week Notre Dame comes in, it's exciting, and we'll have that for you next week on Gold and Black Live.